Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Shooter drills, broken minds, and Cassini's goodbye kiss. Plus this day in history with the death of President McKinley and our song of the day by the Darts on your Morning Monarchy for September 14th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome back to news brought to you by you, my friends. Streaming live, MediaMonarchy.com/listen, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And it is Thursday. That means Holy Hexes Day. Huge thanks for joining us. And we are brought to you by you. I mean that. MediaMonarchy.com/support has all the links for the places that you can give us that support that we need. Like Bitcoin, like a post office box, like paypal.me/MediaMonarchy, and perhaps most importantly, patreon.com/MediaMonarchy. That automatically gives us that monthly support that we need. And a huge thanks to our latest patron, that's Claire C. Huge thanks to Claire for making the Patreon pledge, because as we noted yesterday from Mesophiliac, if you can give a little, I can give a Pilato. I'll have to work on that a little bit. I also have to work on holding myself together. I went out late last night, and I wasn't really planning on it. I went to go see the band we're going to hear at the end of this episode, the Darts. Got to hang out with them. I think I've got my head on straight for this episode. And I also want to thank, in addition to Claire, I also want to thank our friend Girder. Now, we did that interview with him a couple months back about the horror film called The Circle, about the social network holes. But I got a box in yesterday at the post office. No idea what it was going to be. Open it up, and it's from our friend and supporter Girder. It says he's moving and downsizing and needed to get rid of a little things, and maybe I needed a little bit of protection for the Media Monarchy Kingdom, so he sent me 4 hardened gangsters named Louie, Legs, Don Vittorio, and Fat Tony. Simpsons characters all still in their boxes. Huge thanks, Girder. We are Simpsons nerds, and we are music nerds, and we are news, media, and information nerds. Now, generally speaking, Media Monarchy is pretty much always for adults only, but Thursdays are especially for adults only. That's where we talk about the occult, the underbelly, the dark murder and mayhem going on in society. And it's all using hashtag Holy Hexes, and we're not only crowdfunded, but we are crowdsourced as well. Let's glance at the breaking lamestream news before we dive into the stories. And again, as always, the stories we're going to talk about on these episodes, we tweet out about an hour before showtime, so you can get the stories. You can also get the invite to the chat up in the tweet. Huge thanks to everybody in the chat. Jake, Raleigh, Astro, that gorilla, all of you. Huge thanks. You know, you can actually also listen to the show in Discord if you know how to push all the buttons and stuff. That totally works as well. Trump and Dems move closer to deal on DACA. Sean Spicer basically admitted that he was willing to lie for Trump. Stop the presses. People will lie for puppet presidents. And the rest, I guess, are pretty much Holy Hexes kind of stories. Boyfriend of missing pregnant Maryland teacher found dead, charged in her murder. Leave the light on for ICE. Motel 6 employees reported guests to immigration officials. And finally, I first saw it from our buddy Lauren Coleman. He doesn't just follow the copycat effect, he also follows strange cryptozoological happenings. Fanged creature found on Texas beach after Hurricane Harvey. I believe they have identified the creature. I don't have the name for it here right in front of you, but the picture makes it look like it's a big, gigantic, scary monster. And I think it's, like a lot of things, it's all about perspective. Stand back for your fact check. Police pay. Was the Prime Minister right about salaries? You better check the BBC News. Fact-checking Hillary Clinton's book, What Happened? From PolitiFact. Does a never-aired ghost car commercial depict an unexplained supernatural event? Gosh, Snopes, I don't know. Amal Clooney not pregnant again, despite tabloid cover story from Gossip Cop. And finally, explaining McCain's defense, cut, with quotes around it, from factcheck.org. Insane in the McCain membrane would like endless war. Even Rand Paul tries to stop endless war. You dummy, don't you realize that's how this thing works? Now, I also realized, as we might in a lot of ways, you might see a story once, you might see a story twice, and it probably takes the third time, or at least someone actually saying, hey, Grant Hart died. Drummer, vocalist, songwriter for the influential Minnesota rock band Husker Du died at the age of 56. Death confirmed by the band's publicist, Ken Weinstein. The cause, of course, was cancer. Husker Du, formed by Mr. Hart, the guitarist Bob Mould, and bassist Greg Norton in the late 70s in St. Paul, Minnesota. The trio soon became known for high-volume blasts of heart-quickening rock that could not quite disguise the hooks buried beneath the noise. R.I.P. Grant Hart. We'll pay you better tribute tomorrow and maybe play a little bit of music and, do it a little more respectfully, I suppose. Fridays on your Morning Monarchy are media memes. We call that the entertainment industrial complex. Essentially, every day of your morning show has a different topic of news and helps us kind of go in and out of different areas and kind of research instead of trying to cram everything into one day. Today, however, we'll begin and end with Spokanearchy. That's actually the name of a documentary film about the punk scene in Spokane, Washington. What I mean is this episode will begin and end with bad chaos coming out of my neighbor to the north. Classes in Freeman are canceled for the rest of the week following a shooting at Freeman High School that left one student dead and 3 others wounded. The suspected shooter is expected to make his first court appearance Friday. The student who was killed has now been identified as Sam Strahan, a sophomore. Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezevich said the student was killed after he tried to confront. It's a big difference. Tried to confront the shooter after the first gun jammed. Sacred Heart Medical Center confirmed 3 female teenagers were transported following the shooting. Thursday morning, the hospital said all 3 are in stable condition. Initially, they said they were in serious condition. KREM News wasn't naming the girls, and they're still not naming the girls. And when this story started to break yesterday, and essentially, as is almost always the case, big breaking news we don't actually see while we're doing the news show. Big breaking news seems to filter out when we're doing the daily DJ set at noon. So once this happened, it wasn't very long before I first heard the part that jumps out at me. First heard the part that makes me kind of pay attention. So unfortunately, we hear about these stories all the time. All the time. A student named Corey Thurman said she saw the suspect holding a gun in the hallway before hearing 3 gunshots. She took off running with other students and ended up at the elementary school a short distance away. I felt like I was in a stampede. Thurman said the shooting happened during the 10:15 a.m. bell, the first of the day. She said students had a lockdown drill the day before.
One of the students we spoke with earlier said they had just practiced. They had just had a drill for a lockdown situation here at Freeman High School yesterday. So a lot of them, their first reaction was, oh, I think we're doing a drill again. And then it quickly became apparent that that was not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it, but they just underwent the drill. Again, it was about 10:15 or so when this happened. We don't know yet exactly how the gunman was taken into custody, but a couple of students we talked to alluded to maybe he tossed his guns aside at some point. Elisa, who we just spoke with, mentioned that maybe the janitor played some role in taking that person into custody. So that is one of the questions that remains to be answered.
And that seems to be the word, that it is the janitor. And that's the, again, interesting part of watching mainstream, mainline, bleeds it leads news. Now, fake news loves nothing more than talking about weather, which they've had a blast the last couple of weeks. The only thing they like more than talking about weather is how much people like to travel and shop on the holidays. It's been fake news for a long-ass time. Essentially, yesterday, KREM, where that first clip came from, and where the text we just came from, I don't want to say barely contained glee, but you know they go instant wall to wall. Woo! We are excited. We've got all our people in. We got all our people out on the field. We don't know anything, but that's not going to stop us from talking about this for hours after hours after hours. Oh, hi, you're a young traumatized girl. Pretty horrific event. Would you like to recount it for us over and over and over again? And they act like I've got some other clips. I may have chopped it out. I essentially hit the stream and just hit record, and we actually live streamed it yesterday on our stream, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. While I was rolling tape, capturing not 1, but 2 instances talking about the drill. Now, I first heard about the drill just from the tweets when I first started to see Spokane trending and looking. I see someone that said, and they just had a shooter drill yesterday. I asked him for confirmation. He said, that's what one of the kids had said in the news. So that's where I went, and indeed, there was a drill at the same school, at the same place the day before. As we've heard on events like 9/11, drill started early today.
We heard from a high school student that was there this morning when it happened, talking about what she saw, and then of course
saw the shooter.
Thought they just had a drill yesterday apparently about lockdown, so some of the kids thinking possibly this was another drill situation, of course, and quickly realizing it wasn't. So kids, in an effort to get out, and during the panic and the crisis, she talked about what that was like with her mother standing there, who said she got pulled out of a meeting by someone who heard what was going on and notified you're going to want to respond. The mother saying, we asked her, what are you going to do for your daughter to help her through this? And she said, you know what, I'm her mom, I will do whatever she needs.
So it's not in that clip, I chopped it out, but basically you can hear one of the guys saying, we're not going to go there. Other places, they really want to name the names, but we hold ourselves to a higher level of ambulance chasing. So that's how we begin your morning monarchy today. And unfortunately, it will be bookended with bad news about Spokane-archy. So we'll continue to track that school shooter situation as we track all the other school shooter situations with the copycat effect. Gets it in their heads, drills it into their heads, if you will. No wonder it maybe happens all the time. Continuing your morning monarchy using hashtag Holy Hexes, and we stay up in the Pacific Northwest with a story we've been following for weeks that has finally reached its, perhaps not surprising, at least at this point, conclusion. For 5 months, Seattle Mayor Ed Murray rejected calls for his resignation amid allegations he sexually abused teens decades before entering politics. But Ed Murray couldn't withstand a devastating new allegation from within his own family. Seattle Mayor Ed Murray announced his resignation Tuesday, hours after news emerged that a younger cousin was publicly accusing Murray of molesting him in New York in the 70s. Murray, a Democratic state legislator, elected mayor in 2013, didn't appear in public to make the announcement. Instead, he issued a statement saying his resignation would be effective at 5 p.m. yesterday. Boom, out. While the allegations against me are not true, it's important that my personal issues do not affect the ability of our city government to continue to conduct the public's business. Yeah, that's what we're worried about. He added he was proud of his accomplishments in a long political career, including landmark gay civil rights laws and an enactment of a $15 an hour minimum hourly wage. It was a stunning end. I would disagree. Stunning end, so says the Seattle Times, to a months-long drama that has seen 5 men step forward to accuse Murray of sexually abusing them years ago when they were teenagers. Since the allegations began to emerge in April, Murray has continued to say he's innocent. Though he ended his re-election campaign in May, Murray, until Tuesday, had insisted he would not resign despite all the calls for his exit. The accumulation of these accusations, and now coming from a family member, just made it essential that he resign, said city council member and not the front man of the charlatans, Tim Burgess. Council President Bruce Harrell will temporarily serve as mayor and will decide within 5 days whether to take on the role of acting mayor past the November 7th election.
Seattle's Mayor Ed Murray has resigned after he was accused of sexual abuse again. Murray's cousin told the Seattle Times that Murray forced him into sex when he was a teenager in the 1970s. He was the 5th person to publicly accuse Murray of child sex abuse. Murray issued a statement saying, quote, "While the allegations against me are not true, it is important that my personal issues do not affect the ability of our city government to conduct the public's business." Murray will be replaced by City Council President Bruce Harrell. Harrell said he will decide within 5 days whether to serve the rest of the term, which ends December 31st, or have the City Council vote to install a different City Council member as acting mayor. Murray ended his re-election campaign in May after some earlier allegations surfaced. Despite calls for his resignation, Murray decided to stay on. Before the most recent accusation, several Seattle politicians, including most of the city council and mayoral candidate Jenny Durkin, supported Murray's ambition to remain in office. But Durkin has changed her tune, saying, quote, "It's clear that it is in everybody's best interest for him to resign." Durkin appears to be the frontrunner in the 2017 mayoral election. Murray's resignation will go into effect Wednesday.
And the pedogate revelations go on and on and on. In the election, Seattle voters now are choosing between former U.S. Attorney Jenny Durkin and planner Carrie Moon. And the winner will take over the mayor's office after the election results are certified November 28th. Durkin entered the race after Murray ended his bid and accepted the mayor's endorsement. She removed his name from her campaign website Tuesday afternoon with the quickness. Moon was the first to call for Murray to step down back in May. In a statement, Harrell said, "His heart goes out." His heart goes out to the right people, to survivors of sexual abuse, due to the re-traumatization these allegations have caused. Unspeakable, and require the utmost attention from our legal and social service system, no matter how long ago they might have occurred. I would argue, unfortunately, it is the legal and social system that is fucking us all. You can call it literal, you can call it figurative. So we've been watching that case in Seattle, and it's another example, another situation of pedogate, people in positions of power abusing those around them. Our buddy Aaron Nelson also has a write-up on it on Anti-Media. And yes, as also should be noted, as is noted by our buddy Michael in the chat, guilty until proven innocent. You can be burned immediately with these kind of allegations. And it can definitely be used as a weapon. Again, everything we say and play will be included in the show notes, so you can get that article from our buddy Aaron Nelson to continue the research into this story, as we'll continue to follow it. As we've been following Pedogate since we've been on the air, since we've been online. We've been online for 12 years and 3 days now, my friends. Let's continue to look at Holy Hexes. A former youth pastor who admitted to sexually abusing a young boy in western Michigan a decade ago has been sentenced to 3.5 to 15 years in prison. Wood TV reports 31-year-old Daniel Hoffman learned his punishment on Monday in Ottawa County Circuit Court. He earlier pled guilty to 2 counts of second-degree criminal sexual conduct. Authorities say Hoffman was treated at a hospital for mental health issues last year when he told a nurse about the abuse. This is another example, again, of hotel guys, nurses, the Geek Squad. They're all going to rat you out. They're all little brown shirts. You know, like the UPS guy. They're all little Eichmanns working for their little piece of crumb of the NWO. The victim, a former neighbor of Hoffman in Jenison, who's now an adult, told detectives that it happened between 2003 and 2008, and Hoffman was charged back in May. Since the period when the alleged abuse took place, Hoffman worked in a school district and as a youth minister. And the headline from Detroit Free Press, ex-youth pastor gets prison in decades-old abuse case. So we head from Detroit over to Riverhead, New York, where a carpenter convicted of killing 2 prostitutes in the 1990s may be responsible for at least one of the 10 unsolved killings, people along the Long Island Beach Highway. Suffolk County Assistant District Attorney Robert Biancavilla made the revelation after the sentencing of 51-year-old John Bitriloff. The Manorville man received consecutive 25 years to life sentences for the beating deaths of 2 prostitutes. A jury deliberated for 7 days before convicting him back in May. Bitriloff denied killing the women and intends to appeal. Police on Long Island are still investigating the unsolved killings of 10 victims of an apparent serial killer or killers. The 10 bodies were found within a couple of miles of one another, and several of the victims have all been identified as prostitutes. Until Tuesday, no suspects had been identified in any of the deaths. But Biancavilla said that after the sentencing, that remains some of the victims found along Gilgo Beach may be attributed to the handiwork of Mr. Bitriloff. We can glance in the chat, and in another situation, we can see someone say, "This is all in my backyard." A spokesman for Suffolk County Police Department said detectives do not comment on ongoing investigations. Bitriloff's attorney, Jonathan Manley, said there was never a mention of any connection between his client and the Gilgo killings throughout the trial. This was never mentioned before. This is a serious accusation with absolutely no factual basis. Mr. Bitriloff maintains his innocence in the deaths of Miss Tangrady and Miss McNamee. And any insinuation that he had anything to do with the Gilgo killings is laughable and meant simply to attract headlines. And indeed it does. Associated Press headline, laughable to say client may be tied to New York slayings. With each headline, it gets a little bit darker. But we can do it. We can keep doing this. Hashtag Holy Hexes. So we go from New York, as we do so many times, to Utah. Salt Lake Tribune reports Utahns continue to die by suicide at an alarming pace, state education and health officials said Tuesday in a joint effort to highlight the trends. Now, unfortunately, again, we know what happens when you highlight these trends a lot. Hey, let's give all the kids suicide training. You know what that does. Now, I haven't confirmed this. I saw something on the tweets the other day of some young classroom of a teacher showing kids how you use strap-on dildos, and here's how you penetrate someone from behind. That's your schools. The Utah Department of Health has now confirmed 425 suicides so far in 2017, putting the state roughly on pace to meet or surpass last year's preliminary one-year record of 638 suicide deaths. The numbers are still shifting for 2016 and 2017 as the state medical examiner continues to investigate causes of death for hundreds of pending cases. For 2016, 82 cases remain inconclusive, along with 338 for this year. Elizabeth Bruch, a health department epidemiologist, said Tuesday there remains a lot of we just don't know about what's driving the suicide rate higher in Utah and some of its neighbors, including New Mexico and Colorado, which are also among the top 5 states for suicide. It's clear the trend can't be explained by Utah's population growth alone. From 1999 to 2015, the suicide rate per 100,000 people grew from 15.8 to 24.5, or by more than 50%. Meanwhile, the national suicide rate rose by 24% between 1999 and 2014, according to the National Center for Health Statistics. And again, this is the same kind of work that Lauren Coleman does. That's actually, I believe, what his degrees are in, what the papers on the wall say. Health, Human Services, and education officials delivered the new data to media outlets Tuesday, part of a wider state effort to battle the trend. Health Department spokeswoman Jenny Johnson said suicide prevention programs need more funding in Utah, considering suicide is the 8th leading cause of death in Utah overall and the leading cause of death for ages 10 to 17. Now, even as I was reading that paragraph and I could see the words Colorado, New Mexico coming up, kind of assumed they were going to say, we're wondering what's the difference between higher suicide rates in Utah and why they're lower in Colorado and New Mexico. And we could hazard a guess as to why that might be in a couple of different situations. I wonder if growing up in a theocracy might tend to have a kind of a wiggy effect on people. I don't know, just some speculation as someone who was made to go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night until he was 15. Every week, baby. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. It's Holy Hexes Day. It's Thursday, September 14th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, hitting his microphone. Glad you're here live. Streaming live. MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Sounds like the setup for a terrible joke. 4 doctors and a pizzeria owner go on trial in Costa Rica for organ trafficking. A trial of 4 doctors and a Greek pizzeria owner accused of running an illegal not Oregon, the state I live in, Oregon, like your guts. An illegal organ trafficking ring. They didn't have their permits, I suppose. You know, like all those other trafficking rings seem to run unimpeded. A trial of 4 doctors and a Greek pizzeria owner accused of running an illegal organ trafficking ring in Costa Rica for wealthy foreigners began in capital San Jose. The 5 allegedly sought out poor people willing to sell their kidneys for between $6,000 and $20,000, mostly to Israelis, and that was pretty much my implication of all the other groups that get to run around organ harvesting. I didn't want to say the Israelis, but there you go. There it is, coming from thejournal.ie. Mostly to Israelis, but also to European clients willing to pay as much as $100,000. And also, I believe, if we glance in the breaking news today, Disney pop star, I think, just got a kidney as well. So, you know, pop stars need kidneys too. Surgeries to remove the organs were allegedly carried out in some of the many private clinics in Costa Rica that each year attract thousands of foreigners for cheap medical tourism. The trial is expected to run through November 30th with a bench of 3 judges deciding the verdict. According to the prosecution, the ring was led by Dr. Francisco Jose Mora Palma, head of the nephrology unit, dealing with kidney diseases at the public Calderon Gardera Hospital in San Jose. There's 3 other doctors whose names I will not attempt to pronounce, the Greek man, whose name I will also not pronounce, Karkassis, his last name. He was accused of operating from his pizzeria near the hospital to find potential organ donors with financial problems and linking them up with the doctors in exchange for money. The alleged ring, was busted in 2013 with the arrest of the 5 men who were suspected of having illegally carried out 14 kidney transplants. Prosecutors were on call to 25 witnesses to substantiate their case, including a former policewoman who was said to have worked with the ring after selling her own kidney and who accepted to give evidence against the 5 accused. If convicted, the doctors risk prison for the traffic of persons. For the pizzeria owner, that could be 6 to 10 years behind bars. For the doctors, because the charges involve abusing their professional status to commit a crime, the sentences could be 8 to 16 years. So wait, you're telling me that a pizza place was a front for nefarious? Oh, that's crazy. You're just a shut-up conspiracy theorist. Let's continue to look around the underbelly of #Holy Hexes. For more than a century, archaeologists and historians have assumed that the remains of a person found buried along with arms and horses in one of the most spectacular graves discovered in the Viking Age town of Birka in Sweden belonged to a man. Turns out they were wrong. Osteology and DNA tests show it's always been a she, and she was most likely a powerful military leader. It's actually a woman, somewhere over the age of 30 and fairly tall too, measuring around 170 centimeters. Charlotte Hindesterna Johnson, an archaeologist at Uppsala University, told the local of the finding that was published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology last Friday. Aside from the complete warrior equipment buried along with her, a sword, an axe, a spear, armor-piercing arrows, a battle knife, shield, 2 horses, poor bastards. She had a board game in her lap, or more of a war planning game, used to try out battle tactics and strategies, which indicate she was a powerful military leader. She's most likely planned, led, and taken part in battles. Viking warrior found in Sweden is a woman, researchers confirm. Interestingly enough, that's not the only bit of Viking news coming out. The incredibly well-preserved Viking sword was recently found by a reindeer hunter on a remote mountain in southern Norway. The Glacier Archaeology Program at Oppland County Council recently notified about the sword, which was found in late August in the high mountains of the Lesja area, Lesja. It's a common type of Viking sword. What makes it special is the context and the preservation. It was found about 5,381 feet above sea level. To my knowledge, a Viking sword has never been found at such a high altitude before. 1,100-year-old weapon found on a Norwegian mountain. Now, the reindeer hunter part does make me think. I remember one year we did Christmas with some friends who actually moved up to Spokane in the last year. That's probably around where we're going to be for Thanksgiving. We stayed with them. We did a Christmas, and Bradley showed it was some like weird Swedish Christmas horror movie. And I'm, of course, not going to be able to remember the title, but it had crazed reindeer in it. You'll run into that kind of shit on your Morning Monarchy when it's Holy Hexes Day. And I got the latest update on the Slender Man case, which takes us up to Wisconsin. A Wisconsin girl who told investigators she helped stab a classmate was convinced the crime would protect her and her family from a horror character called Slender Man who thought she was real. The defense is trying to convince jurors that Anissa Wire was suffering from a mental illness at the time of the stabbing at a Waukesha Park in 2014, and therefore is not criminally responsible. Peyton Leutner was stabbed 19 times in a plot by Wire and co-defendant Morgan Geyser, and left in a wooded park where she eventually crawled for help after the girls left. A passing bicyclist found Leutner. Wire and Geyser were arrested later that day and said they were walking to meet Slender Man in a northern Wisconsin forest. All 3 girls were 12 at the time. Anissa's broken mind caused her to lose touch with reality, defense attorney Joseph Smith told jurors. Anissa was under the command and control of a delusional disorder. So the attorney said she had a broken mind. Now, I can also glance at the chat real quick, and that's a great question, Nivik. Is that sword Is that a better Viking sword than that fake-ass Excalibur that was found last week? I think so. I think so. For 341 years, scholars and occultists have been trying to decipher a letter purported to be from Satan. And this week, with the help of the dark web, they finally cracked the code. So the story goes that Sister Maria Crocifissa della Concessione, a nun at the convent of Palma di Matachario in southern Italy, woke up after a fainting spell on my birthday, August 11th, 1676. It would be 301 years before I was born. She woke up after a fainting spell, as was the style at the time, to discover several letters written in her hand in an indecipherable mix of symbols and languages. Sister Maria and her fellow nuns decided the letters were dictated to her by Lucifer in an attempt to drive Sister Maria away from God and the convent. Only one of the letters survived, and for nearly 350 years, it has flummoxed scholars, mystics, and code breakers. But this week, researchers at the Ludum Science Center in Sicily cracked the code using an algorithm they found on the dark web. We primed the software with ancient Greek, Arabic, the runic alphabet, and Latin to descramble some of the letter. And while the translation they came up with does sound sinister, including claims that God and Jesus are dead weights and that the system works for no one, they believe the letter is proof less of the existence of Satan than Sister Maria's talent for languages and mental illness. I personally believe that the nun had a good command of language, which allowed her to invent the code, and she may have suffered from a condition like schizophrenia, which made her imagine dialogues with the devil. Insert Rolling Stones lyric here. Dark web decodes nun's letter from the quote-unquote devil. God, the stories on holy hexes today, each one stranger than the last, and they are sort of mixed in with the fantastical and the weird, and it's just flat-out evil. Up to 400 children died at a Scottish orphanage run by nuns and were buried in a single unmarked grave. Kind of sounds like a Holocaust to me. The Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, which ran the Smilham Park Orphanage in Lanarkshire, has previously acknowledged that 158 children were buried in compartments at a nearby cemetery, but there have long been suspicions that the real figure was far higher. Now, research carried out by BBC Radio 4's File on 4 program and the Sunday Post newspaper, including a trawl of more than 15,000 official records, has revealed hundreds of children died at Smilham, far more than the charity that it ran has admitted. The investigation into Smilham Park Orphanage reveals 402 babies, toddlers, and children died there between 1864 and when it closed its doors in 1981. Most of the children sent to live at the orphanage who died were buried in an unmarked mass grave at St. Mary's Cemetery. Headstones mark the graves of the nuns and staff members buried nearby, but no stone or memorial has ever recorded the names of the lost children. The revelation that up to 400 youngsters and some adults are buried there has provoked calls for Scotland's ongoing child abuse inquiry to investigate. They are quite busy these days, as again, you might know from listening to the Thursday editions of your Morning Monarchy, Pedogate, multi-generational serial killers have been and are running wild. Former First Minister Jack McConnell, who, on behalf of the Scottish government, apologized to victims of care home abuse in 2004, said it was shameful they were still waiting for truth and justice. He said, "It's heartbreaking to discover so many children may have been buried in these unmarked graves. After so many years of silence, we must now know the truth of what happened here." Former residents have accused the nuns and staff who ran the home of beating and neglecting some of the children in their care. Not shocking allegations. We've said it before, we'll say it again. Your institutions that claim to want to help and protect you want your soul. Quite simply. And, of course, probably sexually abusing them as well.
My goal is to find out what exactly happened to my daughter. What exactly went on, and whatever went on, could someone tell me?
Teresa Martin knows one thing for sure. The body of her daughter, Kanika, was found inside of a large cooler in the kitchen of the Crown Plaza Hotel on River Road in Rosemont. But how her daughter got there and the circumstances surrounding her death remain a mystery. Martin says she knows her daughter attended a party in a room here Friday night with a group of friends. But the friends, whose stories she says have changed quite a bit since that night, came back home the next morning with Kanika's car and cell phone, but not Kanika. Rosemont police are investigating, and the hotel management has released a statement saying they're cooperating with that investigation. But that's not enough for Martin, who wants to know how her daughter died. The Cook County Medical Examiner's office says the cause of death is, quote, pending further studies. But Martin and her other daughter want to know whether Kanika walked into that cooler alive or if she was placed there.
I think that someone knew it was an inside job. Someone knew what was going on.
Everybody in that was in the room should march themselves down to the Rosemont Police Department and tell their accountability of what happened inside that room, because somebody inside the room knows what happened.
Rosemont police detectives say this is an open and very active investigation. They are conducting dozens of interviews, including with people who were inside of that room and attending that party that Kanika Jennings attended. They also say that they hope to have new information from the Cook County Medical Examiner surrounding the death of Jennings by Wednesday. And friends and family also circulating a change.org petition. They want to see this hotel shut down. That petition already has more than 30,000 signatures. In Rosemont, Andrea Darlis, WGN News.
I've also been looking at the Cecil Hotel lately. Authorities in suburban Chicago are investigating a young woman's mysterious death over the weekend, a case that's gained national attention as her mother angrily suggested there was foul play. You just heard her say an inside job, and accused police and others of failing to act fast enough upon learning of the disappearance. Kanika L. Jenkins, 19, was found dead inside an industrial walk-in freezer at Rosemont's Crown Plaza around midnight Sunday, more than 24 hours after leaving her home on Chicago's west side to party with friends at the hotel and conference center near O'Hare International Airport. Good God almighty, what's wrong with Chicago? And I would have to say, as I believe has been said by others, perhaps in some ways one of the other larger failings of the Obama administration will be doing absolutely nothing for his crime-ridden cesspit of a hometown. Oh, but we're back to the Salt Lake Tribune. And we mentioned it recently on This Day in History. After 160 years buried in a museum collection, the skull of one of the Mountain Meadow Massacre's youngest victims was laid to rest Saturday in a song-filled ceremony that honored all the migrant children whose lives were cut short in what was the nation's worst peacetime atrocities. The child's remains made the journey from an East Coast museum back to Utah this summer. Saturday, they were interred at the Meadow, where relatives of the doomed Arkansas immigrants gathered to reflect on a tragedy and close a controversy that had ensnared the skull for nearly a decade. It represents all the children who died. Skull of unknown Mountain Meadows Massacre child victim buried as descendants in the Mormon Church mourn the 1857 tragedy. I saw yesterday videos making the rounds. Oh yeah, you remember the videos of Bill Clinton apologizing for all that human experimentation that the states have done? Another week, another musical question. What is Australia's white supremacist group? Antipodean Resistance. Australia's secret collective of neo-Nazis is spreading shocking messages of hate and really funny pictures where they have little skull stickers on them. We talked about this recently, and again, we've speculated that it's just a giant hose job prank. And our buddy Dealey Lama pointed out that they would actually look kind of cool if those were actual, masks and not little stupid smartphone stickers you put over things. As long as we're speculating, newly declassified CIA files seem to confirm certain FBI documents related to Adolf Hitler, which claimed the Nazi Führer escaped Germany and took up residence in South America after World War II. I know we've all heard this story for many, many times. The Simpsons constantly joked about it. Good morning, mein Führer. Aye, aye. The files indicate that in 1955, the chief of the CIA's Western Hemisphere Division received a secret memo with the subject line, Operational Adolf Hitler. It's not a very secret subject line. From the acting CIA station chief in Venezuela, which indicated that one of his sources had received a tip that the Nazi Führer was indeed alive and living in Argentina. Interestingly, these revelations seem to confirm declassified FBI documents that also claimed sources that had indicated that Hitler was indeed living in Argentina. Yeah, das Cellphone ist ein Nuisance-Phone. While the official story sold to the global public is that Hitler died of suicide in the Führer bunker, the actual truth may be vastly different from the popularized versions of events. The CIA station chief informants, C.I. Melody, all capitalized, C-I-M-E-L-O-D-Y, C.I. Melody, was contacted by a former SS trooper, Philip Citrone, who claimed to have been in contact with Hitler, who was living under the pseudonym Adolf Schudelmeyer, about once a month in Colombia while they're on a trip from Maracaibo as an employee of the Royal Dutch Shipping Company. Citrone said that Hitler had left Colombia for Argentina around January 1955 and erroneously suggested that the statute of limitations for war crimes had passed, as it had been 10 years since the end of World War II, and that the Allies could no longer prosecute Hitler as a war criminal. Now, of course, as was just noted about the recent tragedies being uncovered all around, now that it's too late for anyone to be held accountable, the truth must be known. The CIA documents reveal that Citrone told Semelody that he had even taken a photo with Hitler and provided the grainy picture that is included in the CIA memo with Hitler purported to be the man on the right. And there it is. That might probably be our album art today. It's a little black and white photocopy of basically looks like a dude sitting next to Hitler. Let's get our last few Holy Hexes headlines, my friends, as it gets really dark. A 10-year-old boy committed suicide by hanging himself in a suspected blue whale suicide in Ahmedabad on Sunday, according to police. Arat Shah, a resident of the bungalows, was found hanging inside his room on the first floor of the bungalow around 8:30 p.m. on Sunday. The boy's elder brother found his body. There was something drawn on his left arm, and we suspect it might be blue whale related. According to police, the boys were alone with their grandparents on Sunday. Their father, a certified accountant, had gone out to play badminton while his mom was visiting relatives. The boy went to his room around 4 p.m. on Sunday. When he did not come out for a long time, the elder brother went and knocked on the door. Art didn't respond, so he alerted the neighbors, who broke the door to find the boy hanging from the ceiling. Now, we've briefly mentioned what is called the Blue Whale Game or the Blue Whale Challenge. It's another bit of internet insanity. And we can grab another story. We hop over to Russia. Teen throws herself from 15th floor and hits car bonnet after sick online suicide game led to girls jumping to their deaths. I think the game is essentially the idea that there are stages, 50 stages that it instructs followers to carve a whale-shaped figure into their arm, and it's essentially always ever increasing. Now, again, these are the stories that we've put out for you here using hashtag Holy Hexes. There are even many, many more stories. Now, interestingly enough, this would kind of be more of a cyberspace war kind of story, which would be the Tech Tuesday kind of story. But by the time the next Tuesday rolls around, this baby's going to be blown up. The Cassini spacecraft completed its final encounter with Saturn's largest moon, Titan, before setting itself on a final fatal collision course with the ringed planet later this week. The probe passed within 75,000 miles of the moon's surface on Monday. That goodbye kiss, as NASA engineers called it, has altered Cassini's trajectory just enough to send it hurtling towards Saturn, where it will meet its end on Friday.
The Cassini spacecraft got a goodbye kiss as it prepares to meet its end. Cassini made its final flyby of Titan, Saturn's largest moon, on Monday. The spacecraft's project manager says it's really like Cassini and Titan have been in a long-term relationship. In the 13 years that Cassini's been studying Saturn and its moons, it's flown by Titan pretty much every month for over a decade. During those hundreds of passes, Cassini's discovered liquid seas and lakes made of liquid methane. It mapped sand dunes that scientists think are made of solid water ice. Its gravity measurements unveiled Titan's underground ocean of liquid water, meaning the moon could have a habitable environment. Cassini even launched the first human-made object to land in the distant outer solar system, and it landed on, you guessed it, Titan. But NASA didn't call Cassini's final flyby a goodbye kiss just to be cheeky. The phrase relates to Titan's gravity pushing the craft toward its final mission, a dive straight into Saturn's atmosphere. Cassini will transmit as much data as possible before it burns up.
Cassini spacecraft gets goodbye kiss. And it's at that point that we reach our final disturbing headlines here on your Morning Monarchy, the Holy Hexes edition. Hey, CBS, shut the hell up. Leah Remini took home the Emmy for Outstanding Informational Series for her A&E docuseries Leah Remini, Scientology and the Aftermath over the weekend, and the actress was brought to tears by the emotional win. We're very grateful and emotional. We're appreciative of everybody that has supported this show and all the people that were willing to stand up and speak. It's not an easy job, but they were the ones putting their stories out there for everyone to hear, and we're honored to be the vessel to tell these stories. It's about doing the right thing. This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to our contributors. I believe in this speech, she also forgave her mother for getting her into the Scientology cult in the first place. A judge deemed Martin Shkreli a danger to society after posting a $5,000 bounty on Hillary Clinton's hair. We reported that story for you last week as we were talking, oh, he's going to put the Wu-Tang album up for sale on eBay. Oh, speaking of, we've got to look for that. Because it's probably been about 7 days. We'll get that update for you on your daily DJ set at noon about how much money maybe someone's paid for that Wu-Tang Clan record. But he basically said, I'll give you $5,000. We reported this for you. He wanted her hair. He was going to clone her. And the last two stories get darker and transition us into Friday's entertainment industrial complex stories from our local K2, Dateline Portland. A Canadian man who bit a 14-year-old girl on her right breast during a Green Day concert in Portland, Oregon last month has been sentenced to 30 days in jail and 11 months probation. Joel Dauncey of Vancouver, British Columbia, pleaded guilty to harassment and his other charge, third-degree sexual abuse. It was dropped. Court documents say the teen told police she was dancing next to her mother at the August 2nd concert when a stranger bit her. She rated the pain as 3 on a 1 to 10 scale. A woman working at the concert told police that Dauncey had been cut off from buying alcohol. The worker said they witnessed the bite. The 34-year-old man told investigators he does not remember the incident. And just like we began this episode with Spokanearchy, we will end it with even more. All 4 members of the Polish death metal band Decapitated were arrested in Los Angeles over the weekend on charges that they'd kidnapped a woman following their concert in Spokane, Washington on August 31st. Now, disturbing new allegations about the incident in question have surfaced. As the Spokesman Review reports in court documents released Monday, the woman testified that all 4 members of Decapitated gang raped her on their tour bus. Woman alleges all 4 members of Decapitated gang raped her in Spokane. That's holy hexes. Take a moment. Take a breath. All right. We're going to go out with brand new music from my new friends, The Darts. Michelle, Nicole, Christina, and Ricky. Had a good time hanging out with them last night. They kind of spilled wine on me. And my records. Maybe that's why I feel like I had too much to drink. Their new record is called Meow, and it's coming out very, very soon. We're going to hear a brand new song from them called The Cat's Meow from The Darts as your song of the day. But first, as always, past is prologue. Let's take a look at this day in history. September 14th, 1741. George Handel completed Messiah just in time for an orphans' charity concert. So we know how much the powers that shouldn't be care about orphans. September 14th, 1901. U.S. President William McKinley dies after an assassination attempt back on September 6th and is succeeded by Vice President Theodore Roosevelt.
On the evening of September 13th, 1901, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt was where he liked most to be, in the woods, miles from the nearest town, with his wife and children as companions. Accompanied by 2 guides, he had climbed Mount Marcy in the Adirondacks, New York's highest peak. In Buffalo, 7 days earlier, an anarchist had shot President McKinley. But the president's condition had quickly stabilized. And he seemed so certain to recover that Vice President Roosevelt had been encouraged to go ahead with his vacation. Then a messenger struggled up the slope. The president was dying of gangrene.
His condition is grave. Stop. Oxygen is being given. Stop. Absolutely no hope. Stop. Members of the cabinet in Buffalo think you should lose no time coming. Stop.
He wore out 2 teams of horses racing down the mountain by buckboard, then climbed aboard a special train for Buffalo. It took him a total of 12 long hours to get there. By then, McKinley was dead. Theodore Roosevelt took the oath of office in the parlor of a friend's house at 3:30 in the afternoon on September 14th, 1901. He was the youngest president in American history, just 42 years old. Franklin Roosevelt was at sea, returning from another voyage to Europe when he got the news. It was a terrible shock to all, he noted, but it was also exciting. Cousin Theodore's ascension to the nation's highest office had provided him with vivid evidence of how far an ambitious Roosevelt might rise.
It is a dreadful thing to come into the presidency this way, but it would be a far worse thing to be morbid about it. Here is the task, and I have got to do it to the best of my ability, and that is all there is about it. Theodore Roosevelt.
P.S. That messenger sounded like John Lithgow. Oh, because it was John Lithgow, because that's a big Ken Burns production. Ooh, also featuring quote-unquote digger Peter Coyote. That gets into, that whole Laurel Canyon area. It's also worth noting that William McKinley died of an assassination attempt, as we will see repeatedly on this day, September 14th. This day in history, 1936, Raoul Villain, who assassinated the French socialist Jean Jaurès, is himself killed by Spanish Republicans in Ibiza. September 14th, 1959, the Soviet probe Luna 2 crashes onto the moon, becoming the first man-made object to reach it. September 14th, 1960, OPEC was founded on this day, petroleum exporting countries. And the Congo crisis on this day, 1960, same day OPEC was founded, not coincidentally enough. With CIA help, Mobutu Sese Seko seizes power in a military coup, suspending the parliament and the constitution. Another classic CIA coup. We don't interfere in other countries. September 14th, 1968, exactly what a growing, restless nation needs. The Archies premiered on CBS, the cartoon based on the comic book series. September 14th, 1969, the U.S. Selective Service selects September 14th as the first draft lottery date. How would you like to die for empire? 1979, Afghan President Nur Muhammad Tareki is assassinated upon the order of Hafizah Amin, who, of course, gets to be the next president. Pink Floyd's The Wall movie went into production on this day in 1981, and in 1982, President-elect of Lebanon, Bashir Gemayel, is assassinated on this day. September 14th, 1984, the MTV Awards are held for the first time with Bette Midler and Dan Aykroyd hosting. Jump to the 90s, baseball season canceled because of a strike. No, not because of like a pitch that was thrown, because they needed more money. September 14th, 1995, handwritten lyrics for Getting Better by Paul McCartney sold for $249,000 at a Sotheby's auction. Have you guys seen in your towns? It's probably more prominent here in Peak, Portland. Sotheby's is also into real estate. You'll see signs outside of some of the McMansions here in Portland. Sotheby's Realty. September 14th, 1998, telecommunications companies MCI Communications and WorldCom complete their $37 billion merger. September 14th, 2001, historic national prayer service held at Washington National Cathedral for victims of 9/11. A similar service held in Canada on Parliament Hill was the largest vigil ever held in the nation's capital. September 14th, 2003, in a referendum, Estonia approves joining the European Union. Bad move. 2007, the Northern Rock Bank experiences the first bank run in the United Kingdom in 150 years, and we should have known that something was coming, and we kind of did know something was coming. Even at the time, we were already doing Media Monarchy. And I've said it before, there were a lot of people who even by that point were like, 9/11 truth's dead, nothing's going to happen. They've already moved on to their next scam, and it's going to be the finances. That's what Daniel Abrams said. That's what Greg from False Flag News said. September 14th, 2015, the first observation of gravitational waves were made, announced by the LIGO and Virgo collaborations. And a decade ago on my own website, MediaMonarchy.com, media pans Bush's surge speech. In a televised speech, President Bush said his surge strategy has produced positive results, which will allow the U.S. to cut the number of troops in Iraq. Woo! The Washington Compost acted like they were going to keep him honest. And the empire rolls on, propped up by a phony left-right divide. Celebrating birthdays today? Oh, wouldn't you know it? September 14th, 1879. American nurse and activist Margaret Sanger, born on this day. It's also Hal B. Wallace's film producer, he most known for Casablanca. Joey Heatherton's birthday. Steve Gaines, Ed King, both played in Lynyrd Skynyrd. Fred Sonic Smith, born on this day. Steve Berlin from Los Lobos, and even the Dandy Warhols, and a ton of other bands. Pacific Northwest saxophonist legend. It's also Dmitry Medvedev. You might remember him as the third president of Russia. Ben Garant, from all kinds of comedy stuff, but I mostly know him from the state. It's also Andrew Lincoln's birthday. You know him from Walking Dead. It's Nas's birthday and the late, great Amy Winehouse. But we're going to go out with brand new music from our friends The Darts. We've been playing their song, My Heart is a Graveyard, for the better part of the entire year. We rockin'. We love it. So let's get the cat's meow from The Darts as we wrap up your morning monarchy. Hope you're doing well. Hope that Holy Hexes episode didn't knock you out too much. And that you'll join us tomorrow for the Entertainment Industrial Complex version of your morning monarchy. And that's it. I'm trying to think if there's any other important things that I need to tell you. I think I just thank you so very much. You keep us going and growing and moving and grooving. MediaMonarchy.com/support. 12 years, 3 days, and counting. And that's the Holy Hexes edition of your Morning Monarchy for Thursday, September 14th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for listening and reminding you, as always, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.